Chapter 1. The Whispering Forest's Call. In a forgotten village nestled at the foot of the Mist Vale Mountains, where the wind carried ancient secrets, lived Lyra, a young woman with amber eyes and a restless heart. Unlike the other villagers, who found comfort in the rhythm of sowing fields and sharing tales by the fire, Lyra felt a void within her, as if something beyond the horizon yearned for her presence. The village of Thornwick was small, its cobblestone paths worn by time, its people content but wary of the world beyond. Yet Lyra's dreams were filled with visions of distant lands, of skies ablaze with colors she couldn't name. On a crisp autumn night, under a canopy of stars that shimmered like scattered jewels, Lyra heard something peculiar. It wasn't the usual hum of the wind or the rustle of leaves. It was a whisper, soft, almost human, weaving through the air like a melody. It came from the Whispering Forest, a place shrouded in mystery and fear. The elders spoke of it in hushed tones, warning of its enchanted trees and the strange fates that befell those who ventured too deep. But this whisper was different. It called her name. Lyra, come. Her heart raced. She should have ignored it, as any sensible person would. Yet the pull was undeniable, like a thread tied to her soul. Lyra slipped on her worn leather boots, grabbed a cloak the color of midnight, and tucked a bone-handled dagger into her belt. She lit a small lantern, its flame flickering in the cool air, and stepped out into the night. The village was silent, save for the occasional creak of a shutter or the distant bark of a dog. She moved swiftly, her footsteps muffled on the dew-kissed grass, toward the forest's edge. The Whispering Forest loomed before her, its trees tall and gnarled, their branches twisting, like fingers reaching for the sky. As she crossed the threshold, the air grew heavy, charged with an unseen energy. The whispers grew louder, guiding her along a path overgrown with moss and dotted with glowing fireflies. The forest seemed alive, its shadows shifting, as if watching her every move. Lyra's lantern cast a faint glow, illuminating strange carvings on the trunks, symbols she didn't recognize but felt oddly familiar. After what felt like hours, the path opened into a clearing. At its center stood a stone, no taller than her waist, pulsing with a soft, silvery light. It wasn't a natural glow, but something otherworldly, as if the stone held a piece of the moon itself. The whispers crescendoed, urging her closer. Lyra hesitated, her hand hovering over the dagger. What was this place? Why had it called her? But curiosity, her oldest companion, won out. She knelt and touched the stone. A surge of warmth flooded through her, and her vision blurred. Images flashed in her mind, a battlefield strewn with broken banners, a crystal shattered into fragments, and a shadow so vast it swallowed the stars. Voices spoke in a language she didn't know, yet their urgency pierced her heart. The vision faded as quickly as it came, leaving her breathless. The stone's light dimmed, and the whispers fell silent. Lyra stumbled back, her chest tight with a weight she couldn't explain. Something had changed within her. The forest, once alive with sound, now felt still, as if waiting for her next move. She stood, clutching her dagger, and looked around. The clearing was empty, but she felt eyes upon her, not hostile but curious. The stone was just a stone now, its glow gone. Lyra's mind raced with questions. What had she seen? Why her? The weight in her chest pulsed, like a heartbeat not her own. She knew one thing for certain. Her life in Thornwick was over. Whatever had called her here had set her on a path she couldn't ignore. As she turned to leave, a faint rustle broke the silence.
A figure stepped from the shadows, a cloaked stranger, their face hidden, holding a staff carved with the same symbols as the trees.
"You've answered the call," they said, their voice low and resonant. "But are you ready for what comes next?" Lyra's hand tightened on her dagger. "Who are you?" she demanded. The stranger only smiled, their eyes glinting in the dark. "Follow the path, Lyra. The forest will show you." Before she could respond, the figure vanished, as if dissolving into the air. Lyra stood alone, the weight in her chest growing heavier. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she knew she couldn't turn back. Chapter 2. The Path of Shadows. Lyra stood frozen in the clearing, the stranger's words echoing in her mind. "Follow the path, Lyra. The forest will show you." The Whispering Forest was silent now,
its earlier chorus of voices reduced to a faint hum, like the pulse of a sleeping giant. The weight in her chest throbbed, a constant reminder of the stone's touch and the visions it had burned into her soul. She didn't understand what they meant, a shattered crystal, a shadow devouring the stars, but she felt their importance, as if her fate was now tied to something far greater than herself. The clearing was bathed in moonlight, the stars above piercing the canopy of twisted branches. Lyra's lantern flickered, its flame struggling against a sudden breeze. She scanned the edges of the clearing, half expecting the cloaked figure to reappear, but there was nothing, only the faint rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. The path she'd followed to the clearing had vanished, swallowed by the forest's shifting undergrowth. In its place, a new trail stretched into the darkness, marked by faint glimmers of light, like fireflies, frozen in place. Lyra adjusted her cloak and tightened her grip on the dagger. The air was colder now, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something sharper, like ozone before a storm. She took a step toward the new path, then another, her boots sinking slightly into the moss. The glimmers pulsed faintly, guiding her deeper into the forest. Each step felt heavier, as if the ground itself resisted her progress. The weight in her chest pulsed in rhythm with her steps, a strange harmony that both unnerved and emboldened her. As she walked, the forest changed. The trees grew taller, their trunks gnarled and etched with more of the strange symbols she'd seen before. Some glowed faintly, casting eerie shadows that danced across her path. The whispers returned, softer now, weaving words she couldn't quite grasp. They weren't threatening, but they carried an urgency, urging her forward. Lyra's mind raced. Was she walking into a trap, or was this the path the stranger had meant? She had no answers, only the pull of the unknown. After what felt like miles, the path opened into a second clearing, larger than the first. At its center stood a ruin, an ancient structure of crumbling stone, half reclaimed by vines and roots. It looked like a temple, its arches carved with intricate patterns that shimmered faintly in the dark. At the heart of the ruin was a pedestal, and on it rested a single object, a shard of crystal, no larger than her hand, glowing with the same silvery light as the stone in the first clearing. Lyra approached cautiously, her lantern raised. The crystal pulsed in time with the weight in her chest, as if they were connected. She reached out, hesitating. The visions from the stone had been overwhelming. Would this be the same? Before she could decide, a low growl broke the silence. She spun around, dagger drawn, as a pair of glowing eyes emerged from the shadows. A creature stepped into the moonlight, a massive wolf, its fur black as night, its eyes burning with an unnatural green light. It didn't attack, but its presence was a warning.
"Who are you?" Lyra asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. The wolf tilted its head, as if studying her. Then, to her shock, it spoke. "You bear the mark," it said, its voice deep and resonant, like stone grinding against stone. "The forest has chosen you, but you are not yet ready." Lyra's grip on the dagger tightened. "Chosen for what? And what are you?" The wolf's eyes narrowed. "I am a guardian of the veil, bound to protect the shards. You've touched the first stone, awakened the bond, but the path ahead is perilous. The shadow stirs, and you are not strong enough to face it." "Shadow?" Lyra's mind flashed to the vision, the darkness swallowing the stars. "What does it want? Why me?" The wolf didn't answer immediately. It circled her, its movements silent, predatory. The crystal's light is fading. The veil weakens. "You are called because you carry the spark, the will to defy fate, but will alone is not enough." Lyra's frustration boiled over. "Stop speaking in riddles. Tell me what I'm supposed to do." The wolf stopped, its gaze piercing. "Take the shard. It is yours now, but know this. Each shard you claim will draw the shadow closer. It will hunt you, test you, until you are worthy or broken." Lyra glanced at the crystal. It glowed brighter now, as if responding to her presence. She reached out, her fingers trembling, and grasped the shard. A jolt of energy surged through her, sharper than before. New visions flashed, a city of light crumbling to ash, a figure wielding a blade of shadow,
and her own face, streaked with tears, standing before a great chasm. The weight in her chest grew heavier, but so did her resolve. When the vision cleared, the wolf was gone. The clearing was silent, the ruins unchanged. The shard in her hand felt warm, alive. Lyra tucked it into her satchel, her mind racing. The wolf's words echoed, "The shadow will hunt you." She didn't know what that meant, but she felt its truth. Whatever this shadow was, it was coming for her. As she turned to leave, the path behind her shimmered and shifted, revealing a new trail leading deeper into the forest. The glimmers of light reappeared, beckoning her forward. Lyra took a deep breath, her amber eyes gleaming with determination. She didn't know what lay ahead, but she would face it, whatever it took. Chapter 3: The Keeper of the Veil. Lyra clutched the crystal shard in her satchel as she stepped onto the new path, its glimmers of light flickering like stars fallen to earth. The whispering forest seemed to breathe around her, its air thick with the scent of pine and something ancient, like forgotten magic. The weight in her chest pulsed stronger now, a rhythm that matched the shard's faint glow. The wolf's warning echoed in her mind. Each shard you claim will draw the shadow closer. She didn't know what the shadow was, but its presence loomed in her thoughts, as vivid as the visions of crumbling cities and starless skies. The path wound deeper into the forest, twisting through groves where the trees seemed to lean closer, their branches forming a canopy that blocked most of the moonlight. Lyra's lantern cast long shadows, and the symbols carved into the trunks glowed brighter, pulsing in time with her steps. The whispers had returned, no longer a chorus but a single voice, low and melodic, speaking words she couldn't decipher. It felt like a guide, yet she couldn't shake the sense of being watched, not by the forest, but by something darker, waiting just beyond her sight. Her boots crunched on the forest floor, now littered with strange, translucent leaves that shimmered like glass. The path grew narrower, forcing her to duck under low branches and step over roots that seemed to shift beneath her feet.
Fatigue gnawed at her, but the shard's warmth kept her moving. She didn't know how long she'd been walking. Hours, perhaps days. Time felt slippery here, as if the forest existed outside the normal flow of the world. The path ended abruptly at a ravine, its edges jagged and steep, dropping into a void swallowed by mist. Across the gap stood a bridge of woven vines, swaying gently in the breeze. Beyond it, a faint light glowed, not silver like the shard, but golden, warm and inviting. Lyra hesitated. The bridge looked fragile, its vines worn and frayed, but the light called to her, and the shard in her satchel pulsed as if urging her forward. She tested the bridge with one foot, then another, gripping the vine railings. It held her weight, though it creaked ominously. Halfway across, a gust of wind shook the bridge, and Lyra's lantern slipped from her hand, tumbling into the mist below. She froze, heart pounding, as the darkness closed in. The golden light ahead was her only guide now. She moved faster, ignoring the bridge's groans until she reached solid ground. The light came from a cavern entrance, its walls embedded with glowing crystals that cast patterns of gold and amber across the stone. Inside, the cavern opened into a vast chamber. At its center stood a figure, not the cloaked stranger from before, but an old woman draped in robes that shimmered like liquid gold. Her eyes were milky white, yet they seemed to see everything. She held a staff topped with a crystal that matched the one in Lyra's satchel. The air around her hummed with power, and the weight in Lyra's chest surged, almost painfully. "You've come far, child," the woman said, her voice warm but laced with authority. "I am Alara, keeper of the veil. The forest has chosen you, but the choice to continue is yours alone." Lyra's mouth went dry. "The veil? The wolf mentioned it. What is it, and why am I here?" Ilara's lips curved into a faint smile. "The veil is the barrier between worlds, ours and the one where the shadow dwells. Long ago, the crystal of dawn was shattered to seal that barrier, its shards scattered to keep the shadow at bay. But the veil weakens, and the shadow stirs. You bear the spark, Lyra. The will to restore what was broken." Lyra's hand drifted to her satchel, feeling the shard's warmth. This is part of the crystal of dawn?" Ilara nodded. "One of many. Each shard you claim strengthens the veil, but also draws the shadow's gaze. It senses you now, and it will test you. You've seen its power in your visions, a darkness that consumes all light.
Lyra's mind flashed to the shadow, swallowing the stars, the city reduced to ash. What does it want, and why me? I'm just a villager. Softened. No one is just anything, child. The spark chose you because you question, because you seek. But the path is perilous. The shadow will send its agents, creatures of despair, illusions of fear, and there are others who seek the shards for their own ends. Lyra's thoughts turned to the cloaked stranger. Someone else was here. They told me to follow the path. Are they one of these agents? Ilara's expression darkened. The forest is full of allies and deceivers. Trust your heart, but guard it well. The shards will guide you, but they will also test you. Take this. She extended her hand, offering a small amulet shaped like a crescent moon, its surface etched with the same symbols as the trees. It will help you see what is hidden. Lyra took the amulet, its weight surprisingly heavy. As she fastened it around her neck, the cavern trembled. A low, guttural roar echoed from the depths, and the golden light dimmed. Ilara's eyes narrowed. It knows you're here. Go, quickly. The next shard lies beyond the forest in the Valley of Echoes. Follow the light, and do not falter. Before Lyra could ask more, the cavern shook again, and Ilara raised her staff. A wave of golden light enveloped Lyra, and the world blurred. When her vision cleared, she stood at the forest's edge, the Mistvale Mountains looming in the distance. The shard in her satchel glowed faintly, and the amulet hummed against her chest. Behind her, the forest was silent, its whispers gone. Ahead lay a valley, shrouded in fog, where faint echoes called her name. Lyra took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. The shadow was coming, but she would not run. Not yet. Chapter 4, Echoes of the Past. Lyra stood at the edge of the whispering forest, the Mistvale Mountains casting long shadows across the Valley of Echoes below. The fog was thick, swirling like a living thing, and faint voices drifted from its depths, calling her name in tones both familiar and strange. The crystal shard in her satchel pulsed softly, its warmth a steady anchor against the chill of the unknown. The crescent moon amulet hung heavy around her neck, humming faintly as if attuned to the valley's eerie song. Ilara's words echoed in her mind, "Follow the light and do not falter." But no light guided her now, only the fog and the whispers. She descended into the valley, her boots slipping on loose stones. The air grew colder, damp with the scent of wet rock and decay. The voices grew louder, overlapping into a cacophony that made her head ache. Some were soft, pleading, others sharp, accusing. "Lyra, why did you leave? You cannot stop it." She clutched the amulet, hoping it would help her see what is hidden, as Ilara had promised, but it only vibrated faintly, offering no clarity. Her dagger felt inadequate against the unseen, but she kept it ready, her senses sharp. The fog thickened, reducing visibility to a few feet. Shapes moved within it, shadows that vanished when she turned to look. The ground leveled out, and the voices coalesced into a single, clear call, drawing her toward a faint glow ahead. She pushed through the mist, her heart pounding, until she emerged into a circular basin. At its center stood a towering obelisk, its surface etched with the same symbols as the forest trees, glowing with a pale, bluish light. The voices seemed to emanate from it, their words now a chorus of sorrow and warning. Lyra approached the obelisk, her steps slow. The shard in her satchel burned hotter, and the amulet's hum grew stronger, resonating with the obelisk's light. As she reached out to touch the stone, the voices surged, and a vision gripped her. She saw a woman, her face a mirror of Lyra's own, standing in this same valley centuries ago. The woman held a glowing crystal, whole and radiant, and spoke words of power that shook the earth. Shadows rose against her, and the crystal shattered, its pieces scattering as the woman fell. Her eyes filled with defiance. The vision faded, leaving Lyra gasping. The obelisk's light pulsed, and a crack ran down its side, revealing a hollow within. Inside lay another shard, its glow matching the one in her satchel. She reached for it, but a cold laugh stopped her. The fog parted, and a figure emerged, a man in a tattered cloak, his face pale and angular, his eyes glinting with malice. He held a blade that seemed to drink the light, its edge shimmering with an unnatural darkness. "You're persistent," he said, his voice smooth but venomous. "But the shards aren't yours to claim." Lyra drew her dagger, her stance steady despite the fear clawing at her. "Who are you? One of the Shadow's agents?" He smirked, twirling his blade. "Call me Kale. The Shadow has many servants, but I serve my own desires. The shards hold power. Power you can't begin to understand. Hand over the one you carry, and I might let you live."
Lyra's grip tightened on her dagger. The amulet flared, and for a moment she saw Kale differently. His form flickered, revealing a hollow, eyeless figure wreathed in shadow. She blinked, and he was human again, but the image lingered. "You're not getting it," she said, her voice firm. "Step aside." Kale laughed, lunging with unnatural speed. Lyra dodged, her dagger clashing against his blade. Sparks flew, and the obelisk's light flared, the voices screaming in her mind. Kale was fast, his strikes precise, but Lyra was nimble, her instincts honed by years of exploring Thornwick's wilds. She parried and ducked, using the fog to her advantage, but Kale's blade nicked her arm, drawing a line of blood. Pain seared through her, but the shard's warmth surged, dulling it. The amulet flared again, and Lyra saw a pattern in the fog, a path of light leading to the obelisk. She dove past Kale, reaching the hollow and grabbing the second shard. A wave of energy surged through her, stronger than before. Visions flooded her mind, the same woman, now leading an army against a tide of shadow. A city of light falling, and Lyra herself, holding two shards, facing a figure cloaked in darkness. The voices roared, "Restore the light!" Kale snarled, his blade slashing toward her. Lyra rolled away, the shards in their satchel pulsing in unison. The obelisk trembled, and the fog swirled violently, forming a barrier between her and Kale. His eyes burned with rage, but he didn't pursue. "This isn't over," he hissed, vanishing into the mist. The voices faded, and the obelisk's light dimmed. Lyra clutched the new shard, its energy merging with the first, making the weight in her chest both heavier and clearer. The amulet glowed softly, revealing a new path through the fog, leading out of the valley. She bandaged her arm with the strip of her cloak, her mind racing. Kale was no ordinary foe. And the shadow's reach was growing, but the visions showed her ancestor, or someone like her, fighting the same battle. Was this her destiny? As she followed the path, the fog began to lift, revealing the valley's edge and the mountains beyond. The voices were silent now, but their echoes lingered, urging her onward. The shards were more than relics. They were keys to a war older than time, and Lyra, whether she wanted it or not, was part of it. Chapter 5. The City of Forgotten Light. Lyra emerged from the Valley of Echoes, the fog thinning to reveal a vast plain stretching toward the horizon. The Mistvale Mountains loomed behind her, their peaks shrouded in clouds, while ahead, the faint outline of a city glimmered under the dawn's first light. The two crystal shards in her satchel pulsed in unison, their warmth a steady pulse against her side. The crescent moon amulet hung heavy around her neck, humming softly, its etchings glowing faintly, as if sensing something in the distance. The voices from the valley were gone, but their final cry, "Restore the light," echoed in her mind, driving her forward. The plain was dotted with ruins, crumbling pillars and broken statues half buried in the earth, their surfaces worn by centuries of wind and rain. Lyra's boots crunched on gravel as she walked, her eyes scanning for danger. Kale's attack in the valley had left her wary, and the shadow's presence felt closer now, a cold weight at the edge of her senses. The wound on her arm throbbed, but the shard's energy dulled the pain, giving her strength to press on. As she approached the city, its details came into focus. It was vast, its walls of pale stone rising high, though cracked and overgrown with vines. Towers leaned precariously, their spires broken, yet a faint glow emanated from within, as if the city still held some spark of life. The gates were open, their iron rusted and bent. Above them, a faded inscription read, "Luminar, City of Dawn." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. The visions had shown a city of light falling to shadow. Was this it? She stepped through the gates, her dagger drawn. The streets were silent, lined with empty houses and shattered fountains. The air was heavy, carrying the scent of dust and something metallic,
like blood long dried. The shards in her satchel grew warmer, guiding her toward the city's center. The amulet flared, and for a moment she saw the city as it once was, bustling with people, its streets aglow with lanterns, its towers shining like beacons. The vision faded, leaving only ruins and silence. The shards led her to a plaza, dominated by a massive statue of a woman, holding a crystal aloft, its surface identical to the shards she carried. The statue's face was weathered, but familiar. It matched the woman from her visions, the one who had shattered the crystal of Gone.
At the statue's base was a stone door, its surface etched with symbols that glowed in response to the shards.
Lyra pressed her hand against it, and the door rumbled open, revealing a spiral staircase descending into darkness. She hesitated, the memory of Kale's blade flashing in her mind. But the shards pulsed, urging her downward. She lit a torch from a nearby brazier, its flame casting flickering shadows on the walls. The staircase seemed endless, the air growing colder with each step. The amulet hummed louder, and faint whispers returned, not the valley's voices, but something older, speaking of sacrifice and hope. At the bottom, the staircase opened into a chamber lit by a soft, golden glow. At its center stood a pedestal, and on it rested a third shard, larger than the others, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. The walls were covered in murals depicting the crystal of Dawn's creation, its shattering, and a war against the shadow that consumed entire lands. Lyra's eyes lingered on one image, the woman from her visions, standing with others, each holding a shard, facing a figure cloaked in darkness. As she reached for the shard, the chamber shook, and a voice boomed, not from the whispers but from behind her. "You're too late, girl." Lyra spun, torch raised, to see Kale standing at the chamber's entrance, his shadow blade gleaming. But he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a figure cloaked in black, its face hidden, its presence radiating a cold that made Lyra's breath catch. The amulet flared, revealing the figure's true form. A mass of writhing shadows, its eyes burning red. "You've done well to come this far," the cloaked figure said, its voice a hiss that echoed unnaturally. "But the shards belong to the shadow now. Surrender them and you may yet live." Lyra's hand tightened on her dagger. The shards in her satchel burned, and the amulet's glow intensified, casting light that made the cloaked figure recoil. "I'm not giving you anything," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. Kale laughed, stepping forward. "Brave but foolish. You can't fight the shadow." The cloaked figure raised a hand, and the chamber darkened, the golden glow dimming. Shadows coiled around Lyra, cold and heavy, whispering doubts. "You're not enough. You'll fail." But the shard's warmth surged, and the amulet's light flared, banishing the shadows. Lyra lunged for the pedestal, grabbing the third shard. A wave of energy exploded through her, and a new vision gripped her. The woman from her visions, now old, sealing the shards in hidden places, her voice whispering, "Find them, child." Lyra dodged, the amulet's light burning brighter, forcing the shadows back. Kale charged, his blade slashing, but Lyra was faster, fueled by the shard's power. She parried his strike, her dagger sparking against his shadow blade, and kicked him back, gaining distance. The chamber shook again, stones falling from the ceiling. The cloaked figure hissed, its shadows retreating. "This is not the end," it said, vanishing into the darkness. Kale glared at Lyra, his eyes promising vengeance, before he too disappeared. The chamber's glow returned, and the murmurs faded. Lyra clutched the shards, her heart racing. The murals glowed faintly, and the amulet revealed a hidden exit behind the pedestal. She followed it, emerging into the plaza as dawn broke over Luminar. The city seemed less desolate now, its ruins bathed in soft light. The shards hummed, and the amulet pointed her toward a path leading north. Toward mountains where another light flickered. Lyra knew the shadow was watching, and Kale would return. But the shards were hers, and with them, a purpose she was only beginning to understand. She set out, her amber eyes fierce with determination. Chapter 6: The Crest of Starfall. Lyra trekked northward, the plains of Luminar, fading behind her as the terrain grew rugged, giving way to the jagged peaks of the Starfall crest. The 3 crystal shards in her satchel pulsed with a steady rhythm, their warmth a constant companion against the biting mountain wind. The crescent moon amulet glowed faintly, its etching shimmering as if guiding her toward the distant flicker of light Alara had mentioned. The vision of the woman sealing the shards, "Find them, child, you are the last," haunted Lyra, fueling her resolve but also her fear. Was she truly the last hope to restore the Crystal of Dawn? The path was treacherous, winding through narrow ledges and over loose scree that shifted under her boots. The air was thin, sharp with the scent of frost and stone. Her arm, still bandaged from Kale's blade, ached with every movement, but the shard's energy dulled the pain, urging her upward. The mountains loomed like silent sentinels, their peaks piercing the clouds. Strange lights danced in the sky, faint streaks of silver and blue, like stars falling in slow motion. The villagers of Thornwick had called them the Tears of the Crest, said to mark the site of an ancient battle. As she climbed, the amulet hummed louder, and faint whispers returned, not the valley's voices or the forest's, but something new, fragmented like memories caught in the wind. Hold the light, the crest will break you. Lyra gripped the amulet, hoping for clarity, but it only pulsed, its light pointing to a narrow pass ahead. The shards grew warmer, their glow seeping through her satchel, casting faint shadows on the rocks. She felt the shadow's presence again, a cold weight pressing against her mind, but it was distant, watching, waiting. The pass opened into a high plateau, its surface scarred with craters and littered with glowing stones that mirrored the sky's strange lights. At the plateau's center stood a spire of black stone, its surface smooth and reflective, like polished obsidian. The shards in her satchel thrummed, and the amulet flared, revealing symbols etched into the spire that matched those on the forest trees and the luminar murals. A faint hum emanated from the spire, and Lyra's chest tightened, the weight within her resonating with it. She approached, her dagger drawn, senses alert for Kale or the Shadow's agents. The spire's base was surrounded by a ring of glowing stones, and at its center, embedded in the rock, was a 4th shard, its light a deep violet, unlike the silvery glow of the others. As she reached for it, the whispers grew louder, forming a warning. Only the worthy may claim it. Lyra hesitated, the visions of the woman and the shadow flashing in her mind. What did it mean to be worthy? Before she could touch the shard, the air shimmered and a figure appeared, not Kale or the cloaked shadow, but a woman, her form translucent, like a ghost woven from starlight. Her eyes were like Lyra's, amber and fierce, and her face matched the woman from the visions. She wore armor etched with the same symbols, and her voice, when she spoke, was both gentle and commanding. "You are of my blood," the woman said. "I am Eloria, the last Dawnkeeper. The shards chose you, but the crest of Starfall tests your heart." Lyra's breath caught. "You're my ancestor, the one who shattered the Crystal of Dawn?" Eloria nodded. "I broke the crystal to seal the shadow, but it was not enough. The veil weakens, and the shadow seeks to reclaim the shards. You must unite them, Lyra, to restore the light, or all will fall. Why me?" Silence. Lyra asked, her voice trembling. "I'm not a warrior. I don't even know what I'm doing." Eloria's gaze softened. "You were chosen because you question, because you persist. But the shadow will test you, as it tested me. To claim this shard, you must face your fear." The plateau trembled, and the glowing stones flared. Shadows rose from the craters, forming figures, faceless, writhing shapes that whispered doubts. "You'll fail. You're alone." Lyra's heart raced. But the amulet burned against her chest, and the shard's warmth surged. She raised her dagger, ready to fight, but Eloria's voice cut through. "Not with steel, Lyra. With your heart." The shadows lunged, their forms coalescing into visions of her fears. Thornwick burning, her family gone, herself standing alone against an endless darkness. Lyra staggered, the weight in her chest heavy with despair. But the shards glowed brighter, and Eloria's voice echoed, "You are enough." Lyra closed her eyes, focusing on the shard's warmth, the amulet's hum, and her own resolve. She wasn't alone. She carried Aelaria's legacy, the light of the Dawn Keepers. The shadows shrieked as Lyra opened her eyes, her fear replaced by determination. She reached for the shard, and the spire's light flared, banishing the shadows. Her fingers closed around the violet shard, and a surge of energy flooded her, stronger than before. A vision gripped her, Aelaria sealing the shards, her face lined with sorrow, a battlefield where the shadow was driven back, and Lyra, holding 4 shards, standing before a gate of light and shadow. The vision faded, and Aelaria smiled faintly. You are stronger than you know. The next shard lies in the abyss of dusk, where the shadow is strongest. Trust the light within you. She vanished, and the plateau was silent, the spire's glow dimming. Lyra tucked the shard into her satchel, its violet light mingling with the others. The amulet pointed her toward a path descending the mountains, toward a dark chasm where no light flickered. The shadow was closer now. She felt it in the air, in the cold that lingered despite the shard's warmth. Kale and the cloaked figure were out there, waiting. But Lyra was no longer the girl from Thornwick. She was a Dawn Keeper, and she would not falter. Chapter 7: The Abyss of Dusk. Lyra descended the Starfall crest, path growing steeper as it led toward the abyss of dusk. The 4 crystal shards in her satchel thrummed with a restless energy, their combined glow, silver and violet, seeping through the leather, casting faint light on the rocky trail. The crescent moon amulet pulsed against her chest, its etchings flaring as if warning her of the darkness ahead. The air grew heavier, thick with a chill that seeped into her bones, and the sky darkened, not with clouds, but with an unnatural twilight that seemed to swallow the sun. Aelaria's words echoed. The next shard lies in the abyss of dusk, where the shadow is strongest. The path ended at a chasm so vast it seemed to carve the world in two. The abyss of dusk stretched before her, its depths shrouded in a writhing black mist that pulsed like a living thing. No light penetrated its heart, but the amulet glowed brighter, pointing to a narrow stone bridge that spanned the gap, its surface slick with moisture and etched with faint, glowing symbols. The shards burned hotter, urging her forward, but the shadow's presence was overwhelming now, a cold, oppressive force that whispered her doubts. You'll fall. You're not enough. Lyra tightened her grip on her dagger, the wound on her arm a dull ache beneath the bandage. She stepped onto the bridge, her boots slipping slightly, and moved carefully, the amulet's light her only guide.
The mist below churned and faint shapes moved within it. Eyes, claws, formless things that vanished when she looked directly. The whispers grew louder, not the guiding voices of the forest or the echoes of the valley, but something cruel, mocking. Turn back, Lyra. You cannot win. Halfway across, the bridge trembled, and a gust of icy wind nearly knocked her off. She dropped to her knees, clinging to the stone, her heart pounding. The shards pulsed, their warmth cutting through the cold, and the amulet flared, revealing a path of light within the mist, leading to a platform on the far side. Lyra rose, steeling herself, and pressed on, ignoring the whispers and the shapes that clawed at the edges of her vision. The platform was a slab of obsidian, surrounded by jagged spires that rose from the abyss like teeth. At its center stood an altar, and on it rested a 5th shard, its light a deep crimson pulsing like blood. The air around it shimmered with heat, and the shadow's presence was suffocating, pressing against her mind with images of failure. Thornwick in flames, the shards lost, her body broken in the dark. Lyra gripped the amulet, its light pushing back the visions, and stepped toward the altar. Before she could reach it, the mist coalesced, and the cloaked figure from Luminar appeared, its red eyes burning through the darkness. This time it was alone, its form more solid, its shadows writhing like tendrils. You've come far, Dawnkeeper, it hissed, its voice a chorus of malice. But the abyss is mine. The shard is mine. Lyra drew her dagger, the shards in her satchel blazing. You won't take it, she said, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her heart. The amulet flared, revealing the figure's true form, a towering mass of shadow, its eyes like twin infernos, its body a void that devoured light. The figure laughed, raising a hand, and the mist surged, forming shadow beasts, wolves, serpents, and faceless humanoid shapes that lunged toward her.
Lyra dodged, her dagger slashing through one beast, its form dissolving into mist. The shard's energy flowed through her, sharpening her reflexes, but the beasts were endless, their claws raking her cloak, drawing blood from shallow cuts. The amulet burned, its light banishing some of the creatures, but the figure advanced, its shadows coiling around the altar. "You cannot stop the inevitable," it said. "The veil will fall and the shadow will rise." Lyra's eyes locked on the crimson shard. She ducked under a beast's claws, rolling toward the altar, and grabbed the shard. A surge of power roared through her, hotter and fiercer than before. A vision gripped her, Aloria and the Dawnkeepers fighting a final battle, their shards glowing as they sealed the shadow in the abyss. A gate of light collapsing, and Lyra, holding 5 shards, facing the same gate, now cracked and leaking darkness. The vision faded, and the shard's energy merged with the others, the weight in her chest, now a fire that burned away her fear. The figure shrieked, its shadows lunging. Lyra raised the amulet, its light exploding outward, forcing the figure back. The shadow beasts dissolved, and the platform trembled, cracks forming in the obsidian. "This is not the end," the figure roared, its form unraveling as it retreated into the mist. The altar crumbled, and the bridge behind Lyra began to collapse, stones falling into the abyss. She ran, the shards and amulet guiding her to a hidden path along the chasm's edge. The mist pursued, but the shard's light held it at bay. The path led upward, out of the abyss, and Lyra emerged onto a cliff overlooking a sea of stars, reflections of the tiers of the crest in a vast mirrored lake below. The shards hummed, and the amulet pointed north, toward a distant peak where a faint light flickered, brighter than before. Lyra caught her breath, the crimson shard's warmth mingling with the others. The shadow was stronger here, but so was she. The visions showed a gate, a final stand. Her purpose was clear. She was the last Dawnkeeper, and the crystal of Dawn's restoration depended on her. But Kale and the shadow were still out there, and the abyss had shown her their power. She bandaged her new wounds, her amber eyes burning with resolve. The next shard awaited, and she would claim it no matter the cost. Chapter 8. The Peak of Eternal Flame. Lyra stood on the cliff, overlooking the mirrored lake, its surface reflecting the tiers of the crest like a sea of stars. The 5 crystal shards in her satchel pulsed with a vibrant energy, silver, violet, and crimson lights mingling. Their warmth a shield against the chill of the approaching night. The crescent moon amulet glowed steadily, its etchings flaring as it pointed toward a distant peak where a bright, fiery light flickered, cutting through the twilight. The abyss of dusk had tested her, but the shadow's retreat had only strengthened her resolve. She was the last Dawnkeeper, and the crystal of Dawn's restoration was her destiny. The path to the peak was a winding trail of jagged stone, climbing steeply through the Starfall crest. The air grew warmer as she ascended, carrying the faint scent of ash and sulfur, as if the mountain itself burned from within. The shards thrummed, their rhythm syncing with the amulet's hum, guiding her toward the light. The shadow's presence lingered, a cold weight at the edge of her senses, but it was quieter now, as if regrouping after its defeat in the abyss. Lyra's wounds ached, her arm from Kale's blade, her new cuts from the shadow beasts, but the shard's energy dulled the pain, pushing her forward. The trail grew treacherous, the rocks hot under her boots, and steam rose from cracks in the ground. The whispers returned, softer now, not the cruel taunts of the abyss, but echoes of encouragement. "The flame awaits. Hold the light." Lyra clutched the amulet, its glow revealing faint symbols etched into the rocks, glowing like embers. The peak loomed closer, its summit crowned with a fiery glow that pulsed like a beacon. The air shimmered with heat, and the ground trembled faintly, as if the mountain were alive. At the summit, Lyra found a crater, its edges blackened and cracked, filled with a pool of molten light. Not lava, but something purer, like liquid flame. At its center floated a 6th shard, its light a radiant gold, pulsing with an intensity that made the others seem dim. The amulet flared, and the shards in her satchel burned, resonating with the shard in the crater. The air was thick with heat and power, and Lyra's chest tightened, the weight within her now a blazing fire that matched the shard's glow. As she stepped toward the crater, a familiar laugh cut through the air. Kale emerged from the shadows, his tattered cloak billowing, his shadow blade gleaming with an unnatural darkness. "You're predictable, Dawn Keeper," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Chasing shards like a moth to a flame. This one's mine." Lyra drew her dagger, the shard's energy surging through her. "You've lost every time, Kale. Step aside." Kale's eyes glinted with malice. "Not this time. The shadow grows stronger with each shard you claim. You're only hastening its return." Before Lyra could respond, the crater flared, and a figure rose from the molten light, not the cloaked shadow, but a being of pure flame, its form humanoid but shifting, its eyes like burning coals. "The shard is not for the unworthy," it said, its voice a roar of fire. "Prove your heart or burn." Kale smirked, stepping back. "Let's see how you fare, girl." The flame being lunged, its body a torrent of fire that scorched the ground. Lyra dodged, the heat searing her cloak, and slashed with her dagger, but the blade passed through the flames harmlessly. The shards pulsed and the amulet flared, revealing a pattern in the crater's light, a path to the shard. Lyra dove through the flames, the shard's energy shielding her from the worst of the heat, and reached the golden shard. Her fingers closed around it, and a surge of power roared through her, hotter than any before. A vision gripped her, Aloria and the Dawn Keepers standing on this peak, forging the crystal of dawn in a blaze of light, the shadow breaking through the veil, only to be driven back by the crystal's power, and Lyra, holding 6 shards, standing before a gate where light and shadow clashed. The vision faded, and the shard's energy merged with the others, the weight in her chest now a radiant inferno. The flame being roared, its form shifting to attack, but Lyra raised the amulet, its light blending with the shard's glow. The crater's flames parted, and the being bowed, its voice softer now. "You are worthy, Dawn Keeper." "A flame of the crest burns in you," Kale snarled, his shadow blade slashing toward her. Lyra parried, the shard's power making her faster, stronger. Their blades clashed, sparks flying, and the crater trembled, molten light spilling over its edges. Lyra ducked under Kale's strike, kicking him back, and the amulet flared, forcing him to retreat into the shadows. "You can't run forever," he shouted, vanishing. The crater's light dimmed, and the flame being dissolved, leaving the summit silent. Lyra tucked the golden shard into her satchel, its light mingling with the others. The amulet glowed, revealing a path descending the peak, toward a distant valley where a final light flickered. The last shard, she knew. The shadow was stronger now, its presence a constant pressure, but Lyra felt the Dawn Keeper's legacy within her. She was ready for the final test. Chapter 9. The Valley of the Last Light. Lyra descended from the peak of eternal flame, the golden shard's radiant warmth blending with the silver, violet, and crimson glows of the others in her satchel. The 6 crystal shards pulsed in harmony, their energy a steady fire in her veins, countering the chill of the Starfall Crest's winds. The crescent moon amulet glowed brightly, its etchings flaring as it pointed toward a distant valley where a solitary light shimmered. Brighter and purer than any before, Aloria's vision lingered in Lyra's mind, a gate where light and shadow clashed, and Lyra standing before it, holding the shards. The final shard awaited, and with it the truth of her purpose as the last Dawn Keeper. The path wound through the mountains, its rocky terrain giving way to a lush valley cradled between towering peaks. The air was warm, fragrant with wildflowers, and the faint tang of ozone, as if a storm had just passed. The shards thrummed, their light seeping through her satchel, and the amulet hummed, guiding her toward the valley's heart. The shadow's presence was stronger now, a cold pressure that tightened with each step, whispering doubts. "You'll fail, the light will fade," but Lyra's resolve burned brighter, fueled by the shards and Aloria's words. "You are enough." The valley was unlike anything she'd seen. Its grass glowed faintly, and streams of liquid light flowed between crystalline rocks. At its center stood a tree, its branches silver and radiant, its leaves shimmering like stars. Beneath it, on a pedestal of white stone, rested the 7th shard, its light a pure blinding white, pulsing like a heartbeat. The amulet flared, and the shards in her satchel resonated, their combined energy making the air hum with power. Lyra's chest tightened, the weight within her now a blazing inferno. As if the shards were part of her, as she approached the tree, the ground trembled and the air darkened. The shadow's presence surged, and the cloaked figure from the abyss appeared, its red eyes burning through the twilight. Beside it stood Kale, his shadow blade gleaming, and a host of shadow beasts, wolves, serpents, and faceless forms, materialized from the mist. "You've come too far, Dawnkeeper," the cloaked figure hissed, its voice a chorus of malice. "The final shard is ours. The veil will fall." Lyra drew her dagger, the shard's energy surging through her. "Not while I'm here," she said, her voice steady. The amulet flared, revealing the figure's true form, a towering void of writhing shadows, its eyes like twin suns of hate. Kale smirked, stepping forward. "You're outmatched, girl. Give up the shards and maybe the shadow will be merciful." The tree's light pulsed, and the whispers returned, not cruel but resolute. "Claim the light. Seal the gate." Lyra sprinted toward the pedestal, dodging Kale's blade as he lunged. The shadow beasts charged, their claws raking the air, but the amulet's light burned, dissolving them. The cloaked figure raised a hand, and the valley darkened, shadows coiling around the tree, dimming its glow. Lyra's heart raced, but the shard's warmth pushed back her fear, guiding her through the chaos. She reached the pedestal, her fingers brushing the white shard. A surge of power roared through her, blinding and pure, and a vision gripped her. Aloria and the Dawnkeepers forging the crystal of dawn, its light sealing the veil, the shadow breaking through, shattering the crystal, and Lyra, holding 7 shards, standing before a gate where light and shadow battled for supremacy. The vision showed her raising the shards, their light merging into a single, radiant whole, the crystal of dawn reborn. The vision faded, and Lyra grasped the shard, its energy merging with the others. The weight in her chest became a supernova, filling her with strength. The tree flared, its light banishing the shadows, and the cloaked figure shrieked, its form unraveling. Kale charged, his blade slashing, but Lyra was faster, the shard's power making her movements a blur. She parried his strike, her dagger sparking against his shadow blade, and the amulet's light forced him back. "You can't stop it," Kale roared, but the cloaked figure's voice cut through. "Enough. The gate awaits." The shadows surged, enveloping Kale and the figure, and they vanished, leaving the valley silent. The tree's light dimmed, and the pedestal crumbled, but the shards in Lyra's satchel glowed brighter, their combined power a beacon. The amulet flared, revealing a path leading out of the valley, toward a mountain where a gate of light and shadow loomed, just as in her vision. The whispers returned, urgent now. "The gate is open. Restore the crystal." Lyra tucked the white shard into her satchel, its light blending with the others. The shadow was gathering its strength, and Kale would return, but Lyra was ready. She was the last Dawnkeeper, and the gate awaited. With a deep breath, she set out, her amber eyes blazing with purpose. Chapter 10: The Gate of Light and Shadow. Lyra left the Valley of the Last Light, the 7 crystal shards in her satchel, blazing with a radiant harmony. Silver, violet, crimson, gold, and white lights intertwining, their warmth a fire in her core. The crescent moon amulet pulsed against her chest, its etchings glowing as it guided her toward the mountain where the gate of light and shadow loomed. The air was charged, heavy with the scent of ozone and the faint hum of power. Aloria's vision burned in her mind, Lyra raising the shards, their light merging to restore the crystal of dawn, sealing the veil against the shadow. This was her destiny. But the shadow's presence was a crushing weight, whispering, "You will fall, the light will break." The path climbed steeply, the terrain a mix of jagged rock and glowing crystal veins that pulsed in time with the shards. The mountain loomed, its peak shrouded in a swirling vortex of light and darkness, where the gate stood as a tear in the world. The amulet flared, its light cutting through the twilight, and the shards thrummed, urging her forward. Lyra's wounds ached, her arm from Kale's blade, her body from the shadow beasts, but the shard's energy surged, dulling the pain and sharpening her resolve. She was the last Dawnkeeper, and the fate of the veil rested on her. As she neared the peak, the ground trembled, and the vortex intensified, light and shadow clashing in bursts of energy. The gate appeared, a towering arch of stone, its surface etched with symbols that glowed and darkened in waves. At its center was a void, half blinding white, half pitch black, pulsing like a heartbeat. Prosody rate down 7%. The shards burned hotter, and the amulet hummed, revealing a platform before the gate where a final pedestal stood, empty, waiting for the crystal of dawn. Before Lyra could approach, the air shimmered and the cloaked figure emerged, its red eyes blazing. Kale stood beside it, his shadow blade drawn, and an army of shadow beasts materialized, wolves, serpents, and towering forms of writhing darkness. "You've brought the shards to us, Dawnkeeper," the cloaked figure hissed, its voice a storm of malice. "The veil will fall, and the shadow will consume all." Lyra drew her dagger, the shard's power flooding her. "The veil will hold," she said, her voice unwavering. The amulet flared, revealing the figure's true form, a colossal void, its eyes like dying stars, its body a maelstrom of shadow. Kale smirked, stepping forward. "You're alone, girl. You can't fight us all." The shards pulsed, and the whispers returned. Not doubts, but Aeloria's voice. "Restore the crystal, seal the gate." Lyra sprinted toward the pedestal, dodging Kale's blade as he lunged. The shadow beasts charged, their claws slashing, but the amulet's light burned, dissolving them. The cloaked figure raised a hand, and the gate's void surged, shadows spilling out, dimming the platform's light. Lyra's heart pounded, but the shard's warmth banished her fear, guiding her through the chaos. She reached the pedestal, the shards blazing in her satchel. The amulet glowed, and Lyra pulled the shards out, their lights merging into a radiant spectrum. The cloaked figure roared, its shadows lunging, but Lyra raised the shards, and their light exploded, forcing the shadows back. Kale charged, his blade slashing, but Lyra was faster, the shard's power making her a blur. She parried his strike, her dagger sparking, and kicked him back, the amulet's light burning his skin. The shards hovered, drawn to the pedestal, and Lyra placed them one by one, their lights fusing into a single blinding whole. A vision gripped her, Aeloria and the Dawnkeeper sealing the veil, their crystal of dawn banishing the shadow, the crystal shattering to protect the world, and Lyra, now, restoring it. The shards merged, forming the crystal of dawn, its light a supernova that filled the platform. The cloaked figure shrieked, its form unraveling, and the shadow beasts dissolved. Kale staggered, his blade faltering. "No," he roared, but the crystal's light surged, and the gate's void began to close, light overtaking shadow. Lyra raised the crystal, its power flowing through her, and spoke words she didn't know, ancient and resonant, sealing the veil. The gate stabilized, its darkness fading, and the cloaked figure vanished, its final scream echoing. Kale glared, his form flickering, then fled into the shadows. The platform was silent. The crystal of dawn glowing softly on the pedestal, the gate now a radiant arch of light. Lyra's chest was light, the weight gone, replaced by peace. The amulet dimmed, its work done, and the whispers fell silent. Lyra looked at the crystal, knowing her journey wasn't over. The shadow might return, and Kale was still out there. But for now the veil was sealed, and the light held. She turned from the gate, her amber eyes bright, ready for whatever came next. Chapter 11. The Dawn's new keeper, Lyra, stood before the gate, now a radiant arch of pure light, its stone etched with symbols that glowed softly, no longer clashing with shadow. The crystal of dawn rested on the pedestal, its multifaceted surface pulsing with a harmonious blend of silver, violet, crimson, gold, and white light. The weight in her chest was gone, replaced by a quiet warmth, as if the crystal's power had become part of her. The crescent moon amulet lay still against her skin, its etchings dim but humming faintly, a reminder of her journey. The shadow was banished, the veil sealed, but Lyra knew her task wasn't over. Kale's escape and the shadow's lingering presence meant the fight was far from finished. The mountain air was crisp, carrying the scent of stone and distant pine. The vortex of light and shadow had dissipated, and the tiers of the crest shimmered in the sky, their streaks of silver and blue brighter now, as if celebrating the crystal's restoration. Lyra's wounds ached, her arm from Kale's blade, her body scarred from shadow beasts. But the crystal's light dulled the pain, filling her with strength. She was no longer the restless girl from Thornwick. She was the last Dawnkeeper, bearer of Aeloria's legacy. As she stepped away from the gate, the platform trembled, and a soft voice echoed, not the cruel whispers of the shadow or the guiding murmurs of the forest, but Eloria's, warm and resolute. "You've done what we could not, Lyra," it said. "The crystal is whole, but its light must be guarded. The shadow will always seek to return." Lyra's hand rested on her dagger, her amber eyes scanning the horizon. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "The crystal is restored, but Kale is still out there, and the shadow, it's not gone." Eloria's presence shimmered before her, a translucent figure of starlight. "The crystal must be protected, hidden where the shadow cannot reach. You are its keeper now. But beware, Kale seeks the shard's power for himself, and the shadow's agents will not rest. You must forge your own path, Lyra, as I did." The vision faded, and Lyra felt a pang of loneliness. She was alone again, the weight of her role settling on her shoulders. The amulet flared briefly, revealing a path descending the mountain, leading toward the plains where Thornwick lay. But she couldn't return, not yet. The crystal was too powerful, too dangerous to bring to her village. She needed a place to hide it, a sanctuary beyond the shadow's reach. Lyra carefully lifted the crystal from the pedestal, its light warm in her hands, its power thrumming through her. She tucked it into her satchel, its glow muted but steady. The path down the mountain was less treacherous now, the rocks cool under her boots, the air lighter. The amulet guided her, its light pointing to a distant forest, not the whispering forest, but another, its trees tall and golden, radiating a quiet strength. As she walked, the shadow's presence lingered, a faint chill at the edge of her senses. She remembered Kale's parting words, "You can't run forever." He was out there, plotting, and the shadow's defeat was only temporary. The crystal's restoration had weakened it, but its agents would regroup. Lyra's mind raced with questions. Where could she hide the crystal? Who could she trust? The visions had shown Eloria sealing the shards. Could Lyra do the same, scattering the crystal's power again if needed? The forest loomed ahead, its golden leaves shimmering in the dawn. As Lyra entered, the air grew warm, and the trees seemed to hum, their branches swaying without wind. The amulet flared, and a figure stepped from the shadows, not Kale or the cloaked figure, but Alara, the keeper of the veil, her golden robes glowing softly. "You've done well, Lyra," she said, her milky eyes seeing more than they should. "The crystal is whole, but its light draws danger. You must choose its fate." Lyra clutched the satchel, the crystal's warmth steadying her. Aloria said to hide it, but where? And what about Kale, the shadow? Alara's expression was grave. "The Golden Grove is a sanctuary, shielded from the shadow's gaze. You may leave the crystal here, under our protection. But Kale is a traitor, once a dawnkeeper, who sought the crystal's power for himself. He will not stop, and the shadow will use him. You must decide, guard the crystal, or hunt those who threaten it." Lyra's heart tightened. Guarding the crystal meant safety, but it also meant leaving Kale and the shadow to grow stronger. Hunting them meant danger, perhaps death, but it could prevent another breaking of the veil. She looked at the crystal, its light a promise and a burden. "I'll hide it here," she said finally, "but I won't stop hunting Kale. The shadow won't win." Ilara nodded, her staff glowing. "Place the crystal in the heart of the grove. We will guard it. But be warned, Lyra, the shadow's reach is long, and your path will not be easy." Lyra followed Ilara to a clearing where a tree of pure light stood, its roots pulsing with energy. She placed the crystal at its base, and the tree's light enveloped it, hiding it from view. The amulet dimmed, its work complete, but the warmth in Lyra's chest remained. She was the Dawnkeeper, and her fight wasn't over. As she left the grove, the path ahead stretched toward the horizon, where shadows lingered. Lyra's amber eyes burned with determination. Kale was waiting, and the shadow would rise again. But she was ready. Chapter 11, The Dawn's New Keeper. Lyra stood before the gate, now a radiant arch of pure light, its stone etched with symbols that glowed softly, no longer clashing with shadow. The crystal of dawn rested on the pedestal, its multifaceted surface pulsing with a harmonious blend of silver, violet, crimson, gold, and white light. The weight in her chest was gone, replaced by a quiet warmth, as if the crystal's power had become part of her. The crescent moon amulet lay still against her skin, its etchings dim but humming faintly, a reminder of her journey. The shadow was banished, the veil sealed. But Lyra knew her task wasn't over. Kale's escape and the shadow's lingering presence meant the fight was far from finished. The mountain air was crisp, carrying the scent of stone and distant pine. The vortex of light and shadow had dissipated, and the tiers of the crest shimmered in the sky, their streaks of silver and blue brighter now, as if celebrating the crystal's restoration. Lyra's wounds ached, her arm from Kale's blade, her body scarred from shadow beasts, but the crystal's light dulled the pain, filling her with strength. She was no longer the restless girl from Thornwick. She was the last Dawnkeeper, bearer of Eloria's legacy. As she stepped away from the gate, the platform trembled, and a soft voice echoed, not the cruel whispers of the shadow or the guiding murmurs of the forest, but Eloria's, warm and resolute. "You've done what we could not, Lyra," it said. "The crystal is whole, but its light must be guarded. The shadow will always seek to return." Lyra's hand rested on her dagger, her amber eyes scanning the horizon. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "The crystal is restored, but Kale is still out there, and the shadow, it's not gone." Eloria's presence shimmered before her, a translucent figure of starlight. "The crystal must be protected, hidden where the shadow cannot reach. You are its keeper now. But beware, Kale seeks the shard's power for himself, and the shadow's agents will not rest. You must forge your own path, Lyra, as I did." The vision faded, and Lyra felt a pang of loneliness. She was alone again, the weight of her role settling on her shoulders. The amulet flared briefly, revealing a path descending the mountain, leading toward the plains where Thornwick lay. But she couldn't return, not yet. The crystal was too powerful, too dangerous to bring to her village. She needed a place to hide it, a sanctuary beyond the shadow's reach. Lyra carefully lifted the crystal from the pedestal, its light warm in her hands, its power thrumming through her. She tucked it into her satchel, its glow muted but steady. The path down the mountain was less treacherous now, the rocks cool under her boots, the air lighter. The amulet guided her, its light pointing to a distant forest, not the whispering forest, but another, its trees tall and golden, radiating a quiet strength. As she walked, the shadow's presence lingered, a faint chill at the edge of her senses. She remembered Kale's parting words. "You can't run forever." He was out there, plotting, and the shadow's defeat was only temporary. The crystal's restoration had weakened it, but its agents would regroup. Lyra's mind raced with questions. Where could she hide the crystal? Who could she trust? The visions had shown Eloria sealing the shards. Could Lyra do the same, scattering the crystal's power again, if needed? The forest loomed ahead, its golden leaves shimmering in the dawn. As Lyra entered, the air grew warm, and the trees seemed to hum, their branches swaying without wind. The amulet flared, and a figure stepped from the shadows. Not Kale or the cloaked figure, but Alara, the keeper of the veil, her golden robes glowing softly. "You've done well, Lyra," she said, her milky eyes seeing more than they should. "The crystal is whole, but its light draws danger. You must choose its fate." Lyra clutched the satchel, the crystal's warmth steadying her. Eloria said to hide it, but where? And what about Kale, the shadow? Alara's expression was grave. "The Golden Grove is a sanctuary, shielded from the shadow's gaze. You may leave the crystal here, under our protection. But Kale is a traitor, once a Dawnkeeper who sought the crystal's power for himself. He will not stop, and the shadow will use him. You must decide, guard the crystal, or hunt those who threaten it." Lyra's heart tightened. Guarding the crystal meant safety, but it also meant leaving Kale and the shadow to grow stronger. Hunting them meant danger, perhaps death, but it could prevent another breaking of the veil. She looked at the crystal, its light a promise and a burden. "I'll hide it here," she said finally. "But I won't stop hunting Kale. The shadow won't win." Alara nodded, her staff glowing. "Place the crystal in the heart of the grove. We will guard it. But be warned, Lyra, the shadow's reach is long, and your path will not be easy." Lyra followed Alara to a clearing, where a tree of pure light stood, its roots pulsing with energy. She placed the crystal at its base, and the tree's light enveloped it, hiding it from view. The amulet dimmed, its work complete, but the warmth in Lyra's chest remained. She was the Dawn Keeper, and her fight wasn't over. As she left the grove, the path ahead stretched toward the horizon, where shadows lingered. Lyra's amber eyes burned with determination. Kale was waiting, and the shadow would rise again. But she was ready. Chapter 12. The Hunt Begins. Lyra left the Golden Grove, the warmth of the crystal of dawn lingering in her chest, even though it now rested safely within the radiant tree. The crescent moon amulet hung quietly against her skin, its etchings no longer glowing, but still humming faintly, as if attuned to her purpose. The forest's golden light faded behind her, replaced by the stark plains stretching toward the horizon, where the Mistveil Mountains loomed under a sky streaked with the tears of the crest. Kale's words echoed in her mind. You can't run forever. He was out there, a traitor dawnkeeper, and the shadow's influence still lingered, a cold whisper at the edge of her senses. Lyra was the last dawnkeeper, and her new mission was clear: hunt Kale before he could threaten the crystal again. The plains were vast, dotted with ancient muins and patches of glowing grass that pulsed faintly, remnants of the crystal's power. Lyra's boots crunched on gravel, her dagger at her side, its bone handle worn but familiar. Her wounds, scars from Kale's blade and the shadow beasts, ached, but the lingering energy of the shards kept her strong. The amulet, though dim, seemed to point westward, toward a distant smudge of darkness, where the plains met a jagged ridge. She trusted its guidance, knowing it had led her true through the forest, valley, and abyss. As she walked, the air grew colder, carrying a faint metallic tang, like blood or iron. The shadow's presence was subtle but undeniable, a pressure that made her skin prickle. She remembered Alara's warning. Kale is a traitor, once a dawnkeeper who sought the crystal's power for himself. What had turned him? Had he faced the same trials, the same visions, only to fall to the shadow's promises? Lyra's amber eyes narrowed. She would find him, and she would end this. The ridge loomed closer, its rocks black and jagged, etched with faint, corrupted symbols that pulsed with a sickly green light, unlike the pure glow of the Dawnkeeper's marks. The amulet vibrated, and a low hum filled the air, not the encouraging whispers of the grove, but something harsher, like a warning. Lyra crouched behind a boulder, scanning the ridge. Shadows moved in the distance, figures, too fluid to be human, patrolling the rocks. Shadow beasts, she thought, or worse, Kale's allies. She crept forward, staying low, her dagger ready. The amulet flared briefly, revealing a hidden path winding up the ridge, to a cave mouth where the green light pulsed strongest. The air grew heavier, thick with the scent of decay. As she neared the cave, a voice cut through the silence. Not Kale's, but a woman's, sharp and commanding. She's here, the Dawnkeeper. Lyra froze, her heart racing. The voice came from within the cave, and footsteps echoed, multiple figures. She pressed herself against the rock, listening. Another voice, Kale's, responded, laced with venom. Let her come. The shadow's will is stronger now. She'll break. Lyra's grip tightened on her dagger. The amulet hummed, and a faint vision flickered. Aloria facing a traitor, a man with Kale's face, his eyes burning with greed as he reached for a shard. The vision faded, confirming Alara's words. Kale had been one of them. Corrupted by the shadow's promise of power, Lyra steeled herself and slipped into the cave, the amulet's light guiding her through the dark. The cave opened into a chamber lit by glowing green crystals embedded in the walls. At its center stood Kale, his shadow blade drawn, beside a woman in black armor, her eyes glowing with the same red as the cloaked figures. Shadow beasts prowled around them, their forms shifting, wolves, serpents, and humanoid shapes. Welcome, Dawnkeeper, the woman said, her voice dripping with mockery. I'm Vera, servant of the shadow. You've saved us the trouble of hunting you. Lyra's eyes locked on Kale. You betrayed the Dawnkeepers, she said. Why? The crystal was meant to protect, not destroy. Kale laughed, his blade glinting. Protect? The crystal's power is wasted on the weak. The shadow offers true strength, control over life and death. You're a fool to think you can stop it. Vera raised a hand, and the shadow beasts lunged. Lyra dodged, her dagger slashing through one, its form dissolving into mist. The amulet flared, its light burning the beasts, but Vera's power was stronger, her shadows coiling around Lyra, whispering despair. You're alone. You'll fail. The shard's energy was gone, but the warmth in Lyra's chest surged, a remnant of the crystal's power, pushing back the darkness. She fought through the beasts, her movements swift, fueled by instinct and the amulet's light. Kale charged, his blade clashing against hers, sparks flying. Vera chanted, her shadows thickening, but Lyra focused on the amulet, its hum guiding her. She ducked Kale's strike, kicking him back, and lunged for Vera, her dagger grazing the woman's arm. Vera hissed, her shadows faltering, and the beasts retreated. You can't win, Kale snarled, but Lyra's eyes burned with defiance. She raised the amulet, its light exploding, forcing Kale and Vera to shield their eyes. The chamber shook, crystals shattering, and Lyra sprinted for the exit, the amulet revealing a path to safety. Kale's shout echoed behind her. This isn't over, Dawnkeeper. Lyra emerged onto the ridge, the shadow's presence fading, but not gone. The amulet pointed north, toward a distant light, a new sanctuary perhaps, or a clue to Kale's plans. She was the Dawnkeeper, and the hunt was on. Her amber eyes gleamed, ready for the fight ahead. Chapter 13, Shadows of the North. Lyra stood on the jagged ridge, the wind whipping her cloak, as she gazed north, where the amulet's faint hum pointed toward a distant light flickering against the horizon. The encounter with Kale and Vera had left her shaken but resolute. Their words, "The shadow's will is stronger now," echoed in her mind, a reminder that the crystal of Dawn's safety in the Golden Grove was only a temporary victory. The shadow's presence lingered, a cold thread weaving through the air, and Kale's betrayal as a former Dawnkeeper fueled her determination. She was the last Dawnkeeper, and she would stop him before he could threaten the Vale again. The plains below stretched wide, their glowing grass dimming as the terrain turned barren, giving way to rocky hills scarred by ancient battles. Lyra's boots crunched on loose stones, her dagger at her hip, its blade nicked but sharp. The scars from her fights, Kale's shadow blade, the shadow beast's claws, throbbed faintly, but the warmth in her chest, a remnant of the crystal's power, kept her moving. The amulet, though no longer glowing, vibrated softly, guiding her toward the light, which pulsed like a beacon in the gathering dusk. As she traveled, the air grew sharp, carrying a bitter scent of ash and something sour, like spoiled magic. The shadow's influence was stronger here, its whispers creeping into her thoughts. You're alone. The crystal will fall. Lyra gripped the amulet, its hum grounding her, and pushed the doubts away. She remembered Aloria's vision of Kale's betrayal, his greed for the shard's power. What had driven him to abandon the Dawnkeepers, and who was Vera, with her red eyes and shadow-wrought power? Lyra needed answers, and the light ahead promised them. The hills rose into a desolate plateau, its surface cracked and littered with bones, some animal, some disturbingly human. The amulet's hum grew louder, and the light resolved into a structure, a ruined tower, its stones black and twisted, surrounded by a moat of dark, viscous liquid that pulsed with green light, like the corrupted symbols on the ridge. Shadow beasts prowled the perimeter, their forms shifting, wolves, birds, and humanoid shapes with hollow eyes. Lyra crouched behind a shattered pillar, her heart racing. This was no sanctuary, it was a stronghold of the shadow. The amulet flared briefly, revealing a hidden path through the moat, where stones rose just above the liquid, unmarked by the green glow. Lyra moved silently, her boots barely touching the stones, the amulet's light dimming to avoid detection. The shadow beasts didn't notice, but the air grew heavier, the shadow's presence pressing against her mind. Inside the tower, voices echoed, Kale's, sharp and angry, and Vera's, cold and commanding. You promised results, Kale snapped. The crystal is hidden, and the Dawnkeeper still lives. The shadow grows impatient. Vera's voice was a low hiss. Patience, traitor. The Dawnkeeper's strength is her weakness. She'll come to us, drawn by the bait. The shadow's ritual is nearly complete. When the veil thins, we'll claim the crystal. Lyra's blood ran cold. A ritual? The crystal was safe in the grove, but if the shadow could thin the veil, nowhere was truly safe.
She crept closer, peering through a crack in the tower's wall. Kale and Vera stood before a crude altar, its surface carved with corrupted symbols, a green crystal pulsing at its center. Shadow beasts guarded the chamber, and a faint rift hovered above the altar, a tear in the air leaking darkness. The amulet vibrated, urging her to act, but Lyra knew she was outnumbered. She needed to disrupt the ritual without facing Kale and Vera head-on. The amulet flared again, revealing a network of cracks in the tower's foundation, glowing faintly with the Dawnkeeper's symbols, untouched by the shadow's corruption. An idea formed. She could collapse the chamber, burying the altar and delaying their plans. Lyra slipped around the tower, planting her dagger into the cracks and prying at the stones, the amulet's light guiding her. The tower groaned and the shadow beasts stirred, their heads turning. She worked faster, sweat beading on her brow, until a deep rumble shook the ground. "She's here!" Vera shouted, and the beasts charged. Lyra sprinted, the amulet blazing, its light burning the beasts as they lunged. Kale's blade slashed from the darkness, but she dodged, the warmth in her chest fueling her speed. The tower collapsed, stones crashing, and the green crystal shattered, the rift above the altar flickering out. Vera's scream echoed, and Kale's curse followed. "You'll pay for this." "Dawnkeeper!" Lyra ran, the amulet guiding her to a path down the plateau. The shadow's presence surged, angry but weakened, and the beasts didn't pursue. She stopped at the plateau's edge, catching her breath, the amulet pointing to a new light in the distance, a faint, pure glow unlike the shadow's corruption. The ritual was stopped, but Kale and Vera were alive, and the shadow's plans were far from over. Lyra's amber eyes burned with resolve. The hunt continued, and she would be ready. Chapter 14. The Sanctuary of Starlight. Lyra stood at the edge of the desolate plateau, the collapsed tower's dust settling behind her. The amulet hummed faintly, its crescent moon etchings pulsing as it pointed north toward a pure, steady light that cut through the twilight, a stark contrast to the shadow's sickly green glow. The disruption of Kale and Vera's ritual had weakened the shadow's hold, but their escape meant the threat to the crystal of dawn persisted. The shadows whispered taunts, "You'll fail, the veil will break," clung to her thoughts, but the warmth in her chest, a remnant of the crystal's power, burned brighter, fueling her resolve. She was the last Dawnkeeper, and the hunt for Kale would not end until the shadow was stopped. The path descended into a valley, its terrain softer, with patches of glowing moss and streams that shimmered like liquid starlight. The air was warm, fragrant with the scent of blooming night flowers, and the tiers of the crest streaked the sky above, their silver and blue lights dancing. Lyra's scars ached, her arm from Kale's shadow blade, her body from countless battles, but the amulet's hum steadied her, its guidance unwavering. Her dagger, nicked but sharp, rested at her hip, a constant reminder of the fights ahead. As she followed the light, the shadow's presence lingered, a faint chill that prickled her skin. Vera's words haunted her. "The shadow's ritual is nearly complete. When the veil thins, we'll claim the crystal." The crystal was safe in the Golden Grove, but a thinning veil could expose it. Lyra needed to find the source of this ritual and destroy it. The amulet's light grew stronger, leading her to a grove where trees of translucent crystal stood, their branches glowing with a soft white radiance. At the grove's center was a pool of starlight, and above it floated a stone tablet, its surface etched with Dawnkeeper symbols. Lyra approached, the amulet flaring, and the tablet's symbols glowed, revealing a message in Aloria's voice. "The Sanctuary of Starlight holds the Dawnkeeper's wisdom. Seek the truth of the shadow's ritual here, but beware, its agents are near." The pool rippled, and a vision formed. Aloria and other Dawnkeepers crafting a ward to protect the crystal, their light binding the veil. Kale, young and proud, turning away, his eyes drawn to a dark promise, and a hidden shrine where the shadow's ritual was anchored, its power thinning the veil. The vision faded, and Lyra's heart raced. The shrine was the key. If she could find it, she could stop the ritual. But the amulet vibrated, and a low growl echoed from the trees. Shadow beasts emerged, their forms twisting. Panthers, ravens, and faceless figures, led by Vera, her black armor gleaming, her red eyes burning.
Kale was absent, but Vera's presence was threat enough. "You're persistent, Dawnkeeper," she sneered, "but the shadow sees all." "You'll never reach the shrine." Lyra drew her dagger, the warmth in her chest surging. "I stopped your ritual once. I'll do it again." The amulet flared, its light burning the beasts as they lunged. Vera raised a hand, shadows coiling, but Lyra was faster, dodging and slashing through a beast, its form dissolving into mist. The pool's light pulsed, and the tablet glowed, revealing a hidden path through the grove, leading to the shrine. Lyra fought her way forward, the amulet's light guiding her, its hum drowning out the shadow's whispers. "You're weak. You're alone." Vera's shadows struck, cold and heavy, but the warmth in Lyra's chest burned brighter, pushing them back. She reached the path, sprinting through crystal trees, their light shielding her from the beasts. Vera's voice echoed, "You can't escape the shadow's will." The path ended at a clearing where a shrine stood, a twisted spire of black stone, its surface pulsing with green light, a smaller rift leaking darkness above it. The amulet flared, and the warmth in Lyra's chest surged, guiding her to a Dawnkeeper symbol etched into the ground. She pressed her hand to it, and the symbol glowed, the shrine trembling. Vera appeared, her shadows lunging, but Lyra raised the amulet, its light exploding, forcing Vera back. The shrine cracked, the rift flickering, and Lyra drove her dagger into the symbol, channeling the warmth in her chest. The spire shattered, the green light fading, and the rift collapsed with a scream. Vera staggered, her shadows weakening. "This changes nothing," she hissed, vanishing into the darkness. The beasts dissolved, and the clearing was silent, the pool's light dimming. Lyra caught her breath, the amulet pointing to a new light in the distance, a faint glow, perhaps another sanctuary, or a clue to Kale's whereabouts. The ritual was disrupted, but the shadow's reach was vast, and Kale was still out there. She was the Dawnkeeper, and her amber eyes burned with determination. The hunt was far from over. Chapter 15. The Rift of Fallen Stars. Lyra left the sanctuary of starlight, the shattered shrine's green light fading into memory. The amulet hummed softly, its crescent moon etchings pulsing as it pointed toward a faint, pure glow in the distance, a beacon cutting through the twilight of the northern hills. The destruction of the Shadow's shrine had delayed their ritual, but Vera's parting words, "This changes nothing," rang in Lyra's ears, a reminder that Kale and the Shadow were still plotting to thin the veil and claim the Crystal of Dawn. The warmth in her chest, a lingering spark of the crystal's power, burned steadily, drowning out the Shadow's whispers. "You're too late. The light will fail." She was the last Dawnkeeper, and she would end this threat no matter the cost. The hills were rugged, their slopes littered with crystalline shards that glinted like fallen stars, remnants of an ancient cataclysm. The air was sharp, heavy with the scent of ozone and charred stone, and the tiers of the crest streaked the sky, their silver and blue lights flickering as if warning of danger. Lyra's scars ached, her arm from Kale's shadow blade, her body from battles with shadow beasts, but the amulet's hum kept her focused, its guidance leading her toward the glow. Her dagger, worn but sharp, hung at her hip, ready for the fight she knew was coming. As she climbed, the Shadow's presence grew stronger, a cold weight pressing against her mind. The amulet vibrated, and faint whispers returned, not the encouraging voices of the Dawnkeepers, but something older, fragmented. The stars fell here. The rift must close. Lyra gripped the amulet, its hum grounding her, and pressed on. The glow resolved into a crater at the hill's peak, its edges jagged and glowing with a soft white light. At its center was a rift, smaller than the gate of light and shadow, but pulsing with a mix of starlight and darkness, leaking tendrils of shadow into the air. Lyra approached, the amulet flaring, and the warmth in her chest surged, resonating with the crater's light. The rift was another anchor for the Shadow's ritual, thinning the veil to expose the crystal in the golden grove. She needed to close it, but the Shadow's presence was overwhelming, its whispers now a chorus. "You can't stop us." The Dawnkeepers failed. The amulet revealed a stone at the crater's edge, etched with Dawnkeeper symbols, glowing faintly. If she could activate it, she might seal the rift. Before she could act, the air shimmered, and Kale appeared, his shadow blade gleaming, his eyes burning with rage. Vera stood beside him, her black armor pulsing with green light, her red eyes narrowed. "You're a pest." "Dawnkeeper," Kale snarled, "but this is where your hunt ends." Shadow beasts materialized, wolves, serpents, and towering forms, circling the crater, their hollow eyes fixed on Lyra. Lyra drew her dagger, the warmth in her chest blazing. "You betrayed the Dawnkeepers, Kale. You could have protected the crystal, but you chose the shadow. Why?" Kale laughed, his blade twirling. "The Dawnkeepers were weak, clinging to a dying light. The shadow offers power, eternal, unbreakable. Join us, Lyra, or die." Vera raised a hand, and the rift pulsed, shadows surging toward Lyra. The amulet flared, its light burning the tendrils, but the beasts lunged, their claws slashing. Lyra dodged, her dagger cutting through one, its form dissolving into mist. The warmth in her chest fueled her, making her faster, but Kale was relentless, his blade clashing against hers, sparks flying. "You're nothing without the crystal," he hissed. Lyra parried, her eyes locked on the stone. The amulet's hum grew louder, guiding her. She ducked under Kale's strike, rolling toward the stone, and pressed her hand to the Dawnkeeper symbol. The crater flared, its light intensifying, and the rift began to shrink, the shadows shrieking. Vera chanted, her green light flaring, but Lyra raised the amulet, its light exploding, forcing Vera back. Kale roared, his blade slashing, but Lyra was quicker, kicking him away. The rift closed with a thunderous crack, the crater's light dimming, the shadow beasts dissolved, and Vera staggered, her shadows fading. "You've only delayed us," she spat, vanishing into the darkness. Kale glared, his form flickering. "The final ritual is coming, Dawnkeeper. You can't stop it." He retreated, swallowed by the shadows. Lyra caught her breath, the amulet humming softly, pointing to a new light in the distance. A brighter glow, perhaps the heart of the shadow's plans. The rift was sealed, but Kale and Vera were closing in on their goal. She was the Dawnkeeper, and her amber eyes burned with unyielding resolve. The final battle was near, and she would face it head-on. Chapter 16, The Heart of the Shadow. Lyra descended from the crater of the Rift of Fallen Stars, the sealed rift's fading light, a quiet victory behind her.
The amulet hummed steadily, its crescent moon etchings pulsing as it pointed toward a brighter glow in the distance, nestled within a jagged valley where the northern hills met the Mistvale Mountains. Kale's warning, "The final ritual is coming," echoed in her mind, a chilling reminder that the shadow's plan to thin the veil and seize the crystal of dawn was nearing its peak. The warmth in her chest, a spark of the crystal's power, burned fiercely, silencing the shadow's whispers. "You're too weak. The veil will fall." She was the last Dawnkeeper, and the final battle loomed. She would face Kale and Vera, and she would end this. The valley was stark, its rocky slopes carved with ancient runes that glowed faintly, some pure like the Dawnkeeper's symbols, others corrupted with the shadow's sickly green light. The air was heavy, charged with the scent of iron and ozone, and the tiers of the crest flickered erratically above, their silver and blue streaks dimming as if the sky itself sensed the shadow's growing power. Lyra's scars ached, her arm from Kale's shadow blade, her body from countless fights, but the amulet's hum kept her steady, its guidance unwavering. Her dagger, nicked but sharp, was ready at her hip, a trusted companion for the storm ahead. As she navigated the valley, the shadow's presence surged, a cold weight that pressed against her mind, stronger than ever. The amulet vibrated, and whispers returned, not the fragmented voices of the fallen stars, but Eloria's, urgent and clear. "The heart of the shadow lies ahead. Stop the ritual, or the veil will break." Lyra gripped the amulet, its hum anchoring her and quickened her pace. The glow resolved into a massive structure, a blackened spire, its surface pulsing with green light, surrounded by a ring of dark mist that writhed like a living thing. This was no mere shrine. It was the shadow's stronghold, the anchor for their final ritual. Lyra crouched behind a rune-carved boulder, scanning the spire. Shadow beasts patrolled its base, wolves, serpents, and towering forms with hollow eyes, while green crystals embedded in the spire pulsed, feeding a rift above its peak, larger and darker than any she'd seen, leaking shadows that twisted the air.
The amulet flared, revealing a hidden path through the mist, marked by faint dawnkeeper symbols glowing beneath the corruption. She needed to reach the spire's core and destroy the ritual, but Kale and Vera would be waiting. She moved silently, her boots gliding over the path, the amulet's light dimming to avoid detection. The shadow beasts didn't stir, but the air grew colder. The shadow's whispers now a roar. "You'll die here. The crystal is ours." Lyra pushed forward, the warmth in her chest blazing, drowning out the fear. The path led to a crack in the spire's base, and she slipped inside, the amulet guiding her through dark tunnels lit by green crystals. Voices echoed, Kale's, sharp with frustration, and Vera's, cold and commanding. "The Dawnkeeper's interference ends tonight," Vera said. "The ritual is ready. When the veil thins, the crystal will be ours, and the shadow will rise." Kale's voice was a growl. "She's stronger than you think. If we fail, the shadow won't forgive us." Lyra's heart pounded. The ritual was moments away, and the crystal's safety in the golden grove hung by a thread. The amulet flared, revealing a chamber at the spire's heart, where a massive green crystal pulsed on an altar, its light feeding the rift above. Kale and Vera stood before it, shadow beasts circling, and a cloaked figure, the same from Luminar, hovered, its red eyes blazing, its form more solid, radiating power. The shadow itself was here, or its closest manifestation. Lyra knew a direct fight was suicide, but the amulet revealed a Dawnkeeper symbol etched into the chamber's floor, glowing faintly beneath the altar. If she could activate it, she might disrupt the ritual. She crept closer, staying in the shadows, but the cloaked figure's eyes snapped to her. "The Dawnkeeper," it hissed, its voice a storm of malice. "You're too late." Shadow beasts lunged, and Lyra sprinted, the amulet blazing, its light burning the creatures. Kale's blade slashed, but she dodged, the warmth in her chest fueling her speed. Vera chanted, the rift widening, but Lyra dove for the symbol, pressing her hand to it. The chamber flared, the Dawnkeeper symbol glowing, and the green crystal cracked, the rift flickering. The cloaked figure roared, its shadow surging, but Lyra raised the amulet, its light exploding, forcing it back. Kale charged, his blade clashing against hers, sparks flying. "You can't stop the shadow," he shouted. Lyra parried, her eyes burning with defiance. The chamber shook, the altar crumbling, and the rift began to collapse. Vera screamed, her shadows faltering, and the cloaked figure's form unraveled, its voice echoing, "This is not the end." Lyra kicked Kale back, sprinting for the exit as the spire trembled, stones falling. The amulet guided her out, the warmth in her chest blazing. She emerged into the valley, the spire collapsing behind her, the rift sealed. The shadow's presence faded, but Kale and Vera had escaped, and the cloaked figure's words lingered. The final ritual was stopped, but the shadow's heart remained. Lyra's amber eyes turned to the amulet's new light, a radiant glow, calling her to the final stand. She was ready. Chapter 17, The Dawn's Triumph. Lyra stood in the jagged valley, the collapsed spire's ruins smoldering behind her, its sealed rift a fleeting victory. The amulet blazed, its crescent moon etchings glowing fiercely as it pointed to a radiant light at the valley's heart, where the mist veil mountains converged. The cloaked figure's final words, "This is not the end," echoed, a chilling promise that Kale, Vera, and the shadow were rallying for their last stand. The warmth in her chest, the crystal of dawn's lingering spark, roared like a furnace, silencing the shadow's whispers. "You'll fall. The light is lost." She was the last Dawnkeeper, and this was her final battle, to protect the crystal, seal the veil, and end the shadow's threat. The path to the light was treacherous, the ground cracked and pulsing with corrupted green veins that clashed with faint Dawnkeeper symbols. The air was thick, charged with ozone and the metallic tang of shadow magic, and the tiers of the crest flickered weakly above, their silver and blue streaks nearly swallowed by darkness. Lyra's scars burned, her arm from Kale's blade, her body from countless fights, but the amulet's hum steadied her, its light cutting through the gloom. Her dagger, battered but sharp, was ready at her hip, a symbol of her unyielding will. The light revealed a vast arena of black stone, encircled by jagged peaks, its center dominated by a towering altar where a massive green crystal pulsed, feeding a rift that tore the sky, leaking shadows that writhed like a storm. Kale stood before the altar, his shadow blade gleaming. Vera at his side, her black armor radiating green light, and the cloaked figure above, its red eyes blazing, its form a vortex of darkness, the shadow's heart manifest. Shadow beasts swarmed the arena, wolves, serpents, and colossal forms, guarding the ritual's core. "You're too late, Dawnkeeper," the cloaked figure boomed, its voice a chorus of malice. "The veil is thinning, the crystal will be ours." Lyra stepped forward, the amulet blazing, the warmth in her chest a supernova.
"A veil will hold," she said, her voice ringing with defiance. "The crystal is beyond your reach, and your time ends now." Kale laughed, his blade raised. "You're alone, Lyra. The Dawnkeepers failed, and you will too." Vera chanted, the rift widening, shadows surging toward Lyra. But the amulet flared, its light burning them away. Aloria's voice whispered, "You are the light. End this." The shadow beasts charged and Lyra moved, her dagger slashing through one, its form dissolving into mist. Kale lunged, his blade clashing against hers, sparks flying, but the warmth in her chest fueled her, making her faster. Vera's shadows struck, cold and heavy, but Lyra dodged, the amulet's light pushing them back. The arena shook, the altar's green crystal pulsing wildly, and the rift roared, shadows flooding the sky. Lyra's eyes locked on the altar, where a Dawnkeeper symbol glowed faintly beneath the crystal. She needed to reach it, to break the ritual. The amulet flared, revealing a path through the chaos, and she sprinted, dodging beasts and parrying Kale's strikes. Vera's chant intensified, the rift tearing wider, but Lyra dove, sliding under a beast's claws, and pressed her hand to the symbol. The arena flared, the symbol blazing, and the green crystal cracked, the rift faltering. The cloaked figure shrieked, its shadows lunging, but Lyra raised the amulet, its light exploding, forcing it back. Tail roared, his blade slashing, but Lyra was a blur, her dagger sparking against his, her strength drawn from the crystal spark. She kicked him back, turning to Vera, who staggered as the crystal shattered. Lyra drove her dagger into the altar, channeling the warmth in her chest, and the rift collapsed with a deafening scream, the shadows dissolving. The cloaked figure unraveled, its red eyes fading, its voice a final wail. The shadow endures. Vera fell, her armor crumbling, her red eyes dimming. Kale staggered, his shadow blade faltering. "No," he shouted, lunging, but Lyra was ready. She parried, her dagger piercing his shoulder, and the amulet's light burned him, forcing him to his knees. "You chose the shadow," Lyra said, her amber eyes blazing, "but the light is stronger." She raised the amulet, its light enveloping Kale, and he screamed, his form dissolving into mist, the shadow's hold broken. The arena was silent, the altar in ruins, the rift gone. The tiers of the crest blazed brightly above, their light restored. The amulet dimmed, its work complete, and the warmth in Lyra's chest settled into a gentle glow. The crystal was safe in the golden grove, the veil secure. She was the last Dawnkeeper, but she knew the shadow might one day return. Lyra left the arena, the valley's air now warm, the runes glowing purely. A vision flickered, Aloria smiling, the Dawnkeepers at peace. Lyra's path stretched ahead, to guard the crystal and prepare for future threats. Her amber eyes shone, ready for whatever came next.